The desert doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. And it sure as hell doesn't care about your prayers. Thunder without clouds. That's what they call gunfire in the Badlands. Tonight the desert speaks in muzzle flashes and dying screams. A boy stumbles through the sand, 19 years old, hands bound, blood on his lips. Behind him 3 riders follow like death itself, patient, inevitable, certain. From behind a boulder a woman watches. 52 years of peaceful living crumbling in her white-knuckled grip on an old revolver. She came to save him. Instead, she'll watch him die. The shot echoes across red stone and empty sky. Another innocent becomes another ghost. Another wrong that demands reckoning. Some folks say vengeance belongs to God, but God seems busy elsewhere these days. And some wounds are too deep for prayer, too raw for patience, too personal for divine intervention. When the law fails, and mercy dies when monsters wear human faces and children become casualties, that's when ordinary people make extraordinary choices. The desert breathed fire. Red clouds hung low like wounds across the twilight sky. Heat shimmered off the sand in dying waves. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Then silence. Tommy Kane stumbled forward, 19 years old, hands bound tight behind his back. Rope burns raw around his wrists, blood crusted on his split lip. His boots dragged furrows in the sand as 3 men on horseback pulled him deeper into the wasteland. Eleanor Kane pressed her back against the boulder. 52 years of quiet ranch life had not prepared her for this. Her hands shook as she gripped Samuel's old revolver. The metal felt foreign, cold, heavy. She had followed them for 3 miles. 3 miles of watching her nephew stumble. 3 miles of listening to his labored breathing. 3 miles of planning a rescue that would never come. The leader dismounted, tall, lean. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, like a lightning bolt frozen in flesh. Cole Blackwood, she knew the name. Everyone in these parts knew the name. Boy's got spirit, one of the riders said. Shame to waste it. Cole walked circles around Tommy, slow, deliberate, a predator sizing up prey. Your aunt thinks she can hide from us, Cole said. His voice carried across the desert like smoke. Thinks she can refuse Vincent Harrow and live to tell about it. Tommy lifted his head, defiant. She don't owe you nothing. She owes us respect. Cole drew his pistol. And respect has a price. Eleanor's finger found the trigger. The gun felt impossibly heavy. Samuel had tried to teach her years ago. She had refused. Guns were for men, for violence, for a world she wanted no part of. Now that world had found her anyway. From now on, Cole continued, when Vincent Harrow sends word, folks listen. Your death's gonna teach this whole territory a lesson about manners. Tommy spat blood into the sand. Go to hell. Cole smiled. You first. The gunshot split the air like thunder. Blood exploded across the sand. Tommy's body jerked once, then crumpled. His head, what remained of it, painted the desert in crimson spray. Eleanor screamed. The sound tore from her throat before she could stop it. Raw, primal. The sound of something breaking that could never be fixed. The 3 men turned toward the boulder. Company, one of them said. Eleanor's world tilted. The gun slipped from her fingers. She pressed both hands over her mouth, but the screaming continued inside her skull. Tommy, sweet Tommy who helped with the horses, who brought her wildflowers, who sang old songs while he worked. Gone. Footsteps approached, slow, methodical. Come out, lady, Cole called. No point hiding now. Eleanor closed her eyes. Samuel's voice echoed in her memory. If trouble comes, Ellie, you run. You run and you don't look back. But there was nowhere to run, not anymore. She stood, stepped around the boulder, met 3 pairs of cold eyes. Cole holstered his weapon. Eleanor Kane, I presume. She found her voice, barely a whisper. Why? Business. Cole mounted his horse. Your nephew refused to tell us where you keep your money. Seems he loved you more than his own life. Touching, really. The other riders laughed. Eleanor looked at Tommy's body, at the blood soaking into thirsty sand, at 19 years of laughter and hope snuffed out like a candle. Vincent Harrow wants to see you, Cole said. Tomorrow, Sunset. Devil's Canyon. Come alone or we'll burn every ranch from here to Tombstone. They rode away, hoof beats fading into silence. Eleanor knelt beside Tommy's body. Her hands shook as she touched his face. Still warm. His eyes stared at the sky, seeing nothing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." She sat in the sand until the stars came out, until the desert grew cold, until grief turned to something harder, something sharper. Dawn broke gray and bitter. Eleanor had dragged Tommy's body 3 miles back to the ranch. 3 miles of his weight against her shoulders. 3 miles of his blood staining her dress. 3 miles of thinking about Cole Blackwood's smile. The Kane Ranch sat in a valley between two mesas. Modest, quiet, 15 years of careful work. 15 years of building something clean and peaceful with Samuel. Before Samuel disappeared 5 years ago. Before the dreams turned to nightmares. Before yesterday, she found a shovel in the barn. Her hands soft from years of gentle work blistered within an hour. The ground was hard, unforgiving. Each scoop of earth felt like digging her own grave. Tommy deserved better. He deserved a proper funeral. A preacher, flowers. People who loved him gathered around to say goodbye. Instead, he got a hole in the ground and a broken woman with bloody hands. Eleanor dragged a wooden cross from behind the barn. Samuel had made it years ago for their first dog. Now it would mark her nephew's final rest. She hammered it into the earth with a rock. The cross sat crooked. One arm had snapped off during the long years behind the barn. Perfect. A broken cross for a broken world. Eleanor sat beside the grave as the sun climbed higher. Her dress was ruined. Her hands were raw. Her heart felt like it had been carved out with a dull knife. Tommy's voice echoed in her memory. "Aunt Ellie, why do you keep Uncle Samuel's gun if you won't never use it? Because some things are better left alone, sweetheart. But what if bad men come? Then we pray they don't." Prayer. She had prayed for Samuel when he disappeared, prayed for rain during the drought, prayed for Tommy's safety every day since he'd come to live with her. God's answer lay 6 feet underground. Eleanor stood, walked to the house, climbed the stairs to the bedroom she'd shared with Samuel. In the corner sat his old chest, oak, heavy, locked for 5 years. She found the key where he'd always kept it, taped under the bottom drawer of her dresser. Such a simple thing, such a small secret. The lock clicked open. Inside gun oil, ammunition, a leather holster worn smooth by years of use, maps hand-drawn on yellowing paper, and Samuel's other gun, the one he'd carried before they married, before he'd promised her a peaceful life, a Colt .45, clean, loaded, ready. Eleanor lifted it from the chest, heavier than the revolver, more serious. This wasn't a tool for hunting rabbits or scaring coyotes. This was a weapon for killing men. Beneath the gun lay a photograph. Samuel in a black duster, a badge pinned to his chest. 6 other men flanked him, all armed, all hard-faced, all dangerous. She turned the photograph over. Samuel's handwriting, Harrow Gang, 1868. Before Vincent lost his mind. Eleanor's hands stilled. Vincent Harrow, the name Cole Blackwood had spoken. The man who wanted to see her at Devil's Canyon. Samuel had known him, had hunted him perhaps, or worse, had been one of them. Eleanor studied the maps spread across the bottom of the chest. Detailed, precise. Every canyon, every water source, every hiding place marked in Samuel's careful hand. These weren't the drawings of a rancher. These were the tools of a manhunter. Samuel's voice whispered in her memory. "Some men choose their path, Ellie. Others have it chosen for them. The lucky ones get to walk away when it's over." But Samuel hadn't walked away. He'd disappeared. And now his past had come for the only family Eleanor had left. She closed the chest, strapped on the gun belt. The weight felt wrong, foreign, but she would learn. Tommy's killer was still breathing. That would change. Eleanor Kane walked downstairs, out to the porch, looked across the valley toward the distant mountains where Devil's Canyon waited. "Chua doesn't answer," she said to the empty sky, "so I'll do his work instead." The words tasted like blood and promise. Eleanor spent the day preparing. She cleaned Samuel's Colt until it gleamed, loaded every chamber, practiced drawing from the holster until her hand stopped shaking. The gun felt less foreign now, still heavy, still deadly, but familiar, like meeting an old enemy who might become a friend. As evening approached, she saddled her horse, a mare named Grace, 15 years old, gentle, reliable, not built for what came next, but neither was Eleanor. Devil's Canyon lay 12 miles northeast, a wound in the earth where flash floods had carved deep channels through red stone. Perfect for ambushes, perfect for murder, perfect for what Eleanor had in mind. She rode slowly, no hurry. Vincent Harrow expected a frightened widow begging for mercy. Let him wait. Let him wonder. Let him think she'd lost her nerve. The sun touched the horizon as Eleanor reached the canyon's rim. Below, shadows gathered like pools of black water. The perfect place for secrets, for endings. 3 horses stood tethered near the canyon mouth. Cole Blackwood paced beside a small fire. 2 other men sat on rocks cleaning their weapons. Eleanor smiled. Only 3. They thought one terrified woman posed no threat. They were right. But Eleanor Kane had died yesterday watching her nephew's blood soak into the sand. The woman who rode into Devil's Canyon was something else. Something harder. Something with nothing left to lose. She dismounted at the canyon's edge, 200 feet above the killers. A long shot for Samuel's Colt, but not impossible. Samuel had taught her to shoot years ago despite her protests. Just in case, he'd said. Just in case the world comes for us. Eleanor lay flat against the stone, sighted down the barrel. Cole Blackwood's scarred face filled her vision. Easy. Pull the trigger. Watch him fall. Ride home. But the other 2 would escape, would tell Vincent Harrow what happened, would bring more men, more violence. Eleanor needed them all. She stood, led Grace down the narrow trail into the canyon. Her boots echoed off stone walls, announcing her arrival. Cole looked up as she approached. Mrs. Kane, punctual. I like that in a woman. Eleanor stopped 20 feet away, close enough to see their faces, far enough to draw if needed. Where is he? She asked. Vincent, busy man. Sent us to collect you instead. Cole gestured to his companions. Mrs. Kane, meet Ned Turner and Jack Walsh. They helped put your nephew in the ground. Ned grinned, gap-toothed. Cruel. Boy had spirit. Took 3 bullets to put him down proper. Eleanor's hand drifted toward her gun. He took one. I saw. First one was for noise, Jack said. Boy kept screaming. Had to quiet him down. Lies. Tommy had died instantly, but they wanted to hurt her, wanted to see her break. Eleanor smiled instead. Interesting. Cole frowned. Something funny, lady. You boys ever hear of Samuel Kane? The 3 men exchanged glances. Heard the name, Cole admitted. Your husband, right, missing some years now. 5 years, 2 months, 6 days. Eleanor's voice stayed level, conversational. Know how he disappeared. Fell off a horse, I heard, hit his head, wandered off into the desert. Eleanor nodded. That's the story we told. Truth is, Samuel got word that Vincent Harrow was planning something big. Something that would hurt a lot of innocent people. So Samuel went hunting. Cole's hand moved to his gun. You're talking nonsense, lady. Samuel found Vincent's camp 3 days out from here. Found him planning to rob the silver train. Lot of money on that train. Lot of folks would have died protecting it. Eleanor took a step closer. Samuel put 3 bullets in Vincent's men. Put 1 in Vincent's shoulder. Would have finished the job, but Vincent begged. Promised to leave the territory. Promised to go straight. Another step. Samuel believed him. Let him live. Came home and told me he'd solved our Harrow problem. Never said how. Never said where. Just said we could sleep safe. Cole drew his pistol. You're lying. Eleanor stopped, raised her hands. Samuel made one mistake. He let Vincent live. I don't plan to repeat it. You think you can take 3 armed men? Ned laughed. Lady, you're loco. Eleanor's hands moved, not toward her gun, toward the knife hidden in her boot. She'd practiced the throw for 6 hours. Samuel's throwing knife. Balanced. Sharp. Deadly in the right hands. Her hands weren't right, but they were motivated. The blade took Ned in the throat. He dropped his gun, clutched at the steel buried in his windpipe, made wet gasping sounds. Eleanor drew Samuel's Colt. Cole fired first. The bullet whined past her ear, close enough to burn. Eleanor's shot took him center mass. He staggered, looked down at the blood spreading across his shirt, looked up at Eleanor with surprise. "Vincent was right about you," he whispered, then fell. Jack ran. Eleanor pursued on foot. The canyon walls made escape impossible. Every side passage led to dead ends or deeper into the maze. She found him crouched behind a boulder reloading his rifle. "Don't have to be this way," Jack called. "Vincent just wants to talk." Eleanor said nothing, circled wide, patient. "Your husband cost Vincent everything. 5 years building back what Samuel took. 5 years planning revenge." Eleanor stopped. "Samuel never told me he'd killed Vincent's men. Didn't kill him, worse. Left him crippled, broken. Vincent's been nursemaiding them ever since. Where? Phoenix, old orphanage outside town. Vincent bought it cheap, turned it into something else." Jack's voice carried fear now, real terror. "What kind of something else? Place where broken men go to get fixed, where Vincent teaches them new ways to hurt folks, where he's been training an army for 5 years, waiting for Samuel Kane to show his face again." Eleanor moved closer. "Samuel's dead." "Vincent doesn't think so. Thinks Samuel's just hiding, waiting. Then Vincent's wrong." Eleanor stepped around the boulder. Jack raised his rifle. She shot him twice. Center mass. Professional. Jack slumped against the stone. Blood bubbled from his lips. "Tell Vincent." Eleanor said, "Samuel Kane is dead, but his widow isn't." Jack died with his eyes open, staring at nothing. Eleanor holstered her gun, walked back to collect the bodies. 3 men, 3 lives ended. She felt nothing, no guilt, no satisfaction, just an empty space where emotion should be. Tommy's voice echoed in her memory. "Aunt Ellie, do you ever get scared?" "Everyone gets scared, sweetheart." "What do you do when you're scared?" "You remember that being scared means you're still alive. And as long as you're alive, you can still fight." Eleanor loaded the 3 bodies onto their horses, tied them face down across the saddles, let the blood drip into the sand. A message for Vincent Harrow. She mounted Grace, rode toward home under a sky full of stars. Behind her, the canyon held its silence and its secrets. Eleanor reached the ranch near midnight. She left the 3 horses with their grisly cargo tied to the gate, a message that couldn't be misunderstood. Then she led Grace to the barn, fed her, brushed her down. Simple tasks, normal tasks, the kind of things Eleanor Kane, the rancher, would do. But Eleanor Kane, the rancher, had died yesterday. The woman who walked back to the house moved differently. Watch the shadows, listen to the wind. Check the loads in Samuel's Colt before hanging up the gun belt. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Vincent Harrow wouldn't ignore 3 dead men, wouldn't forgive the insult. He would come with more guns, more men, more violence. Eleanor needed to be ready. She climbed the stairs to the bedroom, opened Samuel's chest again. This time she studied the maps more carefully. Each mark, each notation, each carefully drawn detail. Samuel hadn't just been a manhunter. He'd been a strategist, a planner, someone who thought 3 moves ahead. Eleanor spread the largest map across the bed. It showed the entire territory from Tombstone to Phoenix. Red X marks scattered across the paper like drops of blood. Camps, hideouts, safe houses. One cluster of marks centered on Phoenix. Around a building marked St. Catherine's Home for Orphan Children, abandoned 1867. Samuel's handwriting filled the margins. Notes, observations, warnings. Vincent's bolt hole. 37 rooms, stone walls, only 2 entrances. Defensible but not impregnable. Avoid unless certain of victory. Below that in different ink, Vincent training children. Making soldiers. Must be stopped. And finally in pencil, as if Samuel had hesitated before writing, Eleanor must never know. This burden is mine alone. Eleanor's hand stilled. Children. Vincent Harrow was training children to be killers. She thought of Tommy, 19 years old, still young enough to see the world as a place of wonder. still innocent enough to believe good would triumph over evil. How many other Tommies were suffering in that abandoned orphanage? How many children had Vincent twisted into weapons? Eleanor folded the map, placed it carefully back in the chest. But she couldn't unsee what she'd read, couldn't unknow what she now knew. Samuel had tried to handle this alone, had failed, had paid the price with 5 years of hiding and ultimately his life. Eleanor wouldn't make the same mistakes. Samuel had been a good man trying to work within the law. Eleanor was a woman with nothing left to lose, operating outside all laws except the law of justice. She walked downstairs out to the porch, looked across the valley toward the distant mountains where Vincent Harrow waited. "You want a war," she said to the darkness. "You'll get one, but not alone." Eleanor knew her limitations. 3 men in a canyon was one thing. An army of trained killers was another. She needed help, professional help. Eleanor returned to Samuel's chest, found a smaller map. This one marked bounty hunters, manhunters, professional killers for hire. 3 names were circled in red ink: Josiah Crenshaw, ghost, best shot in the territory, lives in Tombstone Cemetery, lost family to outlaws, unreliable but deadly. Maria Valdez, La Muerte, Spanish gunslinger, fast, beautiful, dangerous, works for highest bidder, no permanent address. Elias Morrison, the preacher, former minister turned killer. Brother is Sheriff Buck Morrison in Silverbrook, conflicted but effective. Below their names, Samuel had written, "If Eleanor ever needs them, God help us all." Eleanor smiled grimly. God hadn't helped so far. Time to try something else. She packed supplies into saddlebags, ammunition, food, water, Samuel's maps, and Tommy's broken cross pulled from his grave. Some symbols carried power, some reminders cut deep enough to motivate even the hardest hearts. Eleanor Kane, the rancher, was dead. Eleanor Kane, the hunter, was just beginning. The sun rose red and angry as she rode away from everything she'd ever called home. Behind her, 3 corpses testified to her intentions. Ahead, Vincent Harrow's army waited in the shadows. Between them lay a choice that would define not just Eleanor's future, but the future of every innocent person in the territory. Samuel had chosen mercy, had let Vincent live, had paid the price. Eleanor chose war. Tombstone Cemetery sprawled across a windswept hill like a city of the dead. Weathered headstones jutted from hard earth. Angels with broken wings presided over forgotten names. Boot Hill's famous residents rested alongside paupers and unknowns. Eleanor found Josiah Crenshaw exactly where Samuel's note said she would. He sat beside 3 graves near the cemetery's center. Clean graves, well tended, fresh flowers despite the desert heat. A rifle lay across his knees. His eyes never stopped moving, watching, waiting. Josiah Crenshaw. Eleanor approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. He didn't look at her. Graveyard's closed to visitors, unless you're planning to stay permanent. "I'm Eleanor Kane." That got his attention. Pale blue eyes studied her face. "Heard that name recently. Your husband's Samuel Kane was dead 5 years now." Josiah nodded toward the 3 graves. "Wife, son, daughter. 7 years for me." Eleanor read the headstones. Martha Crenshaw, beloved wife and mother. James Crenshaw, age 12. Susan Crenshaw, age 8. "I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back." Josiah's voice carried the weight of 7 years' grief. "Sorry doesn't put bullets in the men who killed them." "Did you find them? The men who killed your family?" Josiah smiled. Cold. Empty. "Found them. Buried them. All 5. Right over there." He pointed to a section of unmarked ground near the cemetery's edge. Eleanor understood. "You've been living here ever since." "Martha always loved this place. Said it was peaceful. So I stay. Keep watch. Make sure nobody disturbs the peace. I need your help." "Lady, I don't help nobody no more. I just sit here and wait for my time to come." Eleanor pulled Tommy's bloodstained cross from her saddlebag, placed it on Martha Crenshaw's grave. "My nephew, 19 years old, killed yesterday by Cole Blackwood's gang." Josiah's eyes fixed on the cross. on the dried blood, on the broken arm hanging crooked. Cole Blackwood's dead, Eleanor continued. I killed him last night, him and 2 others. But the man who gave the order is still breathing. Vincent Harrow. Eleanor's surprise must have shown on her face. Josiah chuckled. News travels fast in a place like this. Dead men tell tales if you know how to listen. What do you know about Harrow? Enough to stay far away. Man's got an army holed up in that old orphanage. Got resources, got reach, got nothing left to lose. Neither do I. Josiah studied Eleanor's face, really looked at her for the first time. You killed 3 armed men last night. Yes. Ever killed anyone before? No. How'd it feel? Eleanor considered the question, remembered Ned's surprised face as the knife took his throat. Cole's blood spreading across his shirt. Jack's final words. Empty. Josiah nodded approvingly. Good answer. Means you ain't crazy. Crazy folks love killing. Sane folks just do what needs doing. He stood, brushed dirt from his pants. What makes you think I'd help you? Because Vincent Harrow is training children to be killers. Because my husband tried to stop him 5 years ago and died for it. Because if we don't stop him now, there'll be more graves, more broken crosses. Eleanor pointed to the 3 headstones. More families destroyed. Josiah's jaw tightened. Children. That's what Samuel's notes say. An orphanage full of broken kids being turned into weapons. Sons of bitches. Josiah shouldered his rifle. How many men you planning to recruit? 3. You, Maria Valdez, and Elias Morrison. Good choices, if you can find them. If you can convince them. Can I convince you? Josiah looked at his family's graves, at Tommy's bloody cross, at Eleanor's determined face. Martha always said I'd know when it was time to stop sitting and start moving again. He smiled sadly. Reckon that time's now. Eleanor felt a weight lift from her shoulders, her first ally, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Where do we find Maria Valdez? Last I heard, she was working the cantinas in Silverbrook, making money off drunk cowboys with more bullets than brains. And Elias Morrison, Josiah's expression darkened. That's complicated. Elias is in Silverbrook too, but he ain't the same man he used to be. Word is he's lost his faith, lost his edge. Spends most of his time drunk and preaching to empty churches. Think he'll help? Depends on how much of the old Elias is left under all that guilt and whiskey. Eleanor mounted Grace. Only one way to find out. Josiah whistled sharply. A large black horse emerged from behind a mausoleum. Well-fed, well-trained. A ghost horse for a ghost man. Haven't left this cemetery in 2 years, Josiah said as he mounted. This better be worth it. Eleanor looked back at Tommy's cross resting on Martha Crenshaw's grave. 2 symbols of loss. 2 reminders of what violence could steal from the world. It will be. They rode west toward Silverbrook as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Behind them, the cemetery held its silence. Ahead, 2 more allies waited to be found, or lost forever. The storm broke as Eleanor and Josiah reached Silverbrook. Rain fell in sheets, turning the dusty streets to mud. Lightning split the sky like God's own gunfire. Perfect weather for the kind of conversation Eleanor planned to have. Silverbrook was larger than she'd expected. 3 main streets, a dozen businesses, 2 saloons, 1 church, and a sheriff's office with bars on the windows. Buck Morrison's town, Josiah observed. Elias's brother. Word is Buck don't approve of what Elias became. They left their horses at the livery stable. Paid the boy extra to keep them saddled and ready. Where first? Josiah asked. The church. If Elias Morrison is still preaching, that's where we'll find him. The church sat at the town's eastern edge. Small, plain. A simple wooden cross topped its modest steeple. Light leaked through the windows despite the storm. Eleanor pushed open the heavy doors. The sanctuary was empty except for 1 man kneeling at the altar. Broad shoulders, graying hair, a black coat that had seen better days. Elias Morrison. He didn't look up as they entered. Church is open to all, even killers. Eleanor's hand moved instinctively toward her gun. What makes you think we're killers? The way you walk, the way you watch the shadows, The way your friend's hand never leaves his rifle. Elias finally turned. Plus, I heard about the excitement at Devil's Canyon. 3 dead men. Professional work. Elias Morrison looked older than his 50 years. Lines carved deep by grief and guilt. Eyes that had seen too much. But his hands were steady and his voice carried authority. You're Eleanor Kane. Yes. And you're Josiah Crenshaw, ghost of Tombstone Cemetery. Josiah nodded. Preacher. Former preacher. These days I'm just a man trying to make peace with his past. Eleanor stepped closer. I need your help. I don't help anyone anymore. I just pray and hope God eventually forgives me for what I've done. Vincent Harrow is training children to be killers. Elias's face hardened. I'm aware of Vincent's activities. You know, and you're just sitting here praying. What would you have me do? Storm his fortress gun down his army. Add more blood to my already stained hands. Eleanor pulled out Samuel's map. Spread it on the nearest pew. My husband marked 37 rooms in that orphanage. How many children do you think Vincent has locked in those rooms? Elias stared at the map. His jaw worked silently. How many Tommies is your peace of mind worth? Don't. Elias's voice carried warning. Don't use dead children to justify more killing. I'm not justifying anything. I'm ending it. Eleanor folded the map. With or without you. She turned to leave. Josiah followed. Wait. Eleanor stopped. Elias rose from his knees. You know what Vincent did to me? Why I stopped hunting men and started hunting God? Eleanor waited. 5 years ago, I tracked a killer named Jake Reeves to a farmhouse outside Phoenix. Good Christian family lived there. Father, mother, 3 daughters. Jake was holding them hostage. Elias walked down the center aisle. His footsteps echoed in the empty church. I could have waited, could have planned, could have found a way to save them all. But I was young, arrogant, thought I was God's own avenging angel. He stopped in front of Eleanor. I went in shooting, killed Jake Reeves with the first shot, clean, professional, perfect. Lightning flashed outside. Thunder followed seconds later. The second shot killed the father, ricochet off a cast iron pan. The third shot went wide, hit a support beam. Beam fell, crushed the mother and youngest daughter. Eleanor felt ice in her stomach. 2 surviving daughters, ages 8 and 10, orphans because of my arrogance. You know where they ended up. Eleanor closed her eyes. St. Catherine's Home for Orphaned Children. Vincent's recruiting ground, those little girls I orphaned, they're probably dead now, or worse, turned into the kind of monsters I spent my life hunting. Elias sat heavily in a pew. So you'll forgive me if I don't share your enthusiasm for righteous violence. Eleanor sat beside him. What if there was another way? What way? Samuel's notes mention only 2 entrances to the orphanage, front gate and back door. What if we could get inside without shooting, get the children out before the fighting starts? Vincent has guards, sentries, men who'd shoot children rather than let them escape. Then we make sure those men are looking the wrong direction when the children leave. Josiah leaned against a pew. You're talking about a distraction, something big enough to draw every gun away from the orphanage? Eleanor nodded. Something loud, something violent, something that demands Vincent's personal attention. Like what? Eleanor smiled grimly. Like the woman who killed Cole Blackwood walking up to the front gate and asking for a meeting. Elias stared at her. That's suicide. Not if I have the best sniper in the territory watching my back. Not if I have a Spanish gunslinger covering my retreat. Not if I have a former preacher getting those children to safety while Vincent's men are busy trying to kill me. The 3 sat in silence. Rain drummed against the church windows. Lightning provided irregular illumination. It could work, Josiah admitted. Crazy enough to catch them off guard. It's still suicide, Elias insisted. Everything worthwhile is. Eleanor stood. Question is, are those children worth the risk? Elias closed his eyes. Where do we find Maria Valdez? The Broken Wheel Saloon, Josiah said. If she's still in town. Eleanor folded Samuel's map. Then that's our next stop. As they reached the church doors, Elias spoke again. Mrs. Kane, when this is over, when Vincent's dead and the children are safe. What then? Eleanor thought of Tommy's grave, of Samuel's empty chair, of the ranch she'd burned her bridges to leave. Then we find out if God really does forgive killers. The storm continued as they walked toward the Broken Wheel Saloon. Behind them, the church stood empty. Ahead, their final recruit waited to be found. The war against Vincent Harrow was about to begin. The Broken Wheel Saloon lived up to its name. Half the windows were cracked. The sign hung crooked from rusted chains. Inside, smoke and whiskey fumes created a fog that burned the eyes and throat. Perfect place for a killer to hide. Eleanor pushed through the batwing doors. Josiah and Elias flanked her. 3 pairs of eyes swept the room, looking for threats, looking for Maria Valdez. They found her at a corner table. Beautiful, deadly, unmistakable. Maria Valdez wore a red dress that had seen better days. Dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders. Brown eyes missed nothing. 2 pearl-handled revolvers hung at her hips like jewelry. She was playing poker with 3 cowboys, winning from the look of their empty faces. "Gentlemen," Maria said in accented English, "I believe this hand is mine." She laid down a royal flush, hearts, red as blood. One cowboy slammed his fist on the table. "That's impossible. Ain't no way you drew that, Lucky." Maria's smile never wavered. "Lucky, Sir, luck is for amateurs." The cowboy reached for his gun. Maria's hand moved like lightning. A pearl-handled Colt appeared in her grip, cocked, aimed, ready. "I would reconsider," she said softly. The cowboy froze. His companions backed away slowly. "Smart boys." Maria holstered her weapon, collected her winnings. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to discuss." She looked directly at Eleanor. "Mrs. Kane, I presume." Eleanor approached the table. "You know who I am. News travels fast. Widow kills 3 of Cole Blackwood's men, either very lucky or very dangerous." Maria's eyes studied Eleanor's face. "I don't believe in luck. I need your help." "I assumed as much. Please sit. Your friends as well." Eleanor, Josiah, and Elias took seats around the table. The saloon's other patrons gave them a wide berth. "Tequila," Maria offered. "Information," Eleanor replied. "What do you know about Vincent Harrow?" Maria's expression darkened. "Enough to stay away. Man's building an army, training killers, planning something big. We're going to stop him." "We," Maria laughed. "Lady, you've got sand, I'll give you that. But Vincent's got 40 men, maybe 50. All trained, all loyal, all crazy." Eleanor leaned forward. "He's training children, Maria. Turning orphans into weapons." Maria's laughter died. "Children? My husband's notes say 37 rooms in that orphanage. How many of those rooms hold kids who never asked to be part of Vincent's war?" Maria was quiet for a long moment. She poured herself a shot of tequila, drank it slowly. "I had a brother once," she said finally. "Miguel. 8 years old when the federales took him. Said they were recruiting for the army. Told our mother he'd be a hero." Maria poured another shot. "Know what they turned him into? A killer. Gave him a rifle and pointed him at rebels. Made him shoot men who look like our father. Women who look like our mother." Or she drank the second shot. "Miguel came home 3 years later. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Couldn't stop seeing the faces of people he'd killed. Put his own gun in his mouth rather than live with what they'd made him." Eleanor felt the weight of shared grief. "I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back innocence once it's lost." Maria looked at Eleanor with new respect. "But maybe preventing more loss is worth something." "Is that a yes?" Maria stood. "That's a yes. But I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I get paid. $500 when Vincent's dead." "Done." "Second, any children we save, they go to proper families. No more orphanages. No more institutions." "Agreed." "Third, if this goes bad, if we're outnumbered and outgunned, I reserve the right to shoot my way out alone." Eleanor nodded. "Understood." Maria extended her hand. "Then we have a deal." They shook. Maria's grip was firm, confident, deadly. "Now," Maria said, "what's the plan?" They moved to a private room above the saloon. Eleanor spread Samuel's maps across a wooden table. The 4 studied Vincent's stronghold by lamplight. 2 entrances, Josiah observed. Front gate here, back door here, both heavily guarded. "Guard towers on the corners," Elias added. "Clear fields of fire. Approaching either entrance means crossing open ground under constant watch. Maria traced the building's outline with her finger. Stone construction, thick walls, built to withstand siege. Eleanor pointed to markings on the map. Samuel noted weak points, here and here, places where the stone is cracked or crumbling. Still doesn't solve the approach problem, Josiah said. Even if we breach the walls, they'll see us coming from a mile away. Eleanor smiled. Not if they're looking the wrong direction. She outlined her plan, simple, direct, insane. I walk up to the front gate alone, unarmed. Ask for a meeting with Vincent. Suicide, Elias repeated. Distraction, Eleanor corrected. While Vincent's men are focused on me, Josiah positions himself here. She pointed to a ridge 800 yards from the orphanage. Overwatch, clear shots on the guard towers. Doable, Josiah admitted, if the weather holds. Maria, you're here. Eleanor indicated a position behind the orphanage. When the shooting starts, you breach the back wall. Get to the children's quarters. Get them out. And me, Elias asked. You're with Maria. Those children will be terrified, confused. They'll need someone they can trust, someone who looks like a preacher instead of a killer. Elias winced. What if they've been trained to kill? What if they see us as enemies? Then we improvise. Eleanor folded the map. But we don't abandon them. Maria poured another round of tequila. When do we move? Tomorrow night. New moon. Darkness will help with the approach. What about Vincent? Josiah asked. Man like that doesn't go down easy. Eleanor's hand touched Samuel's gun. Vincent Harrow is mine. Personal, very. They spent the next hour refining details, escape routes, contingencies, signals. As the meeting broke up, Elias pulled Eleanor aside. There's something you should know about my brother. Eleanor waited. Buck's been acting strange lately. Secretive, getting telegrams from Phoenix, leaving town at odd hours. You think he's working for Vincent? I don't know, but if he is, Elias's voice trailed off. If he is, you'll do what needs doing. Elias nodded grimly. God help me, I will. Eleanor spent the night in Silverbrook's hotel. She didn't sleep. Instead, she sat by the window cleaning Samuel's Colt, checking the loads, preparing for what might be her final dawn. Tommy's voice echoed in her memory. Aunt Ellie, are you ever going to get married again? Why would you ask that sweetheart? Uncle Samuel's been gone a long time. Don't you get lonely sometimes, but I've got you. That's enough. What if something happens to me? Nothing's going to happen to you. I promise. Promises. Eleanor had made so many promises over the years. To Samuel when he'd wanted to tell her about his past. Let sleeping dogs lie, honey. The past is past. To Tommy when he'd worried about outlaws. We're safe here. Nothing bad can touch us. All lies. All broken promises. Eleanor assembled the Colt, spun the cylinder. The mechanism was smooth, reliable, ready. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Maria entered. She changed from the red dress into black pants and a dark shirt. Practical clothing for night work. Couldn't sleep either. Eleanor shook her head. Maria sat on the room's other chair. Want to talk about it? About what? About why you're really doing this. And don't say it's just about your nephew. Eleanor holstered the Colt. What do you mean? I've known a lot of people seeking revenge. They burn hot, fast, reckless. You're different. You burn cold, controlled. That kind of anger comes from something deeper than one dead boy. Eleanor stared out the window. Dawn was still hours away. Samuel disappeared 5 years ago. One day he was there, the next he was gone. No note, no explanation, just gone. You think Vincent killed him? I think Samuel went after Vincent and never came back. I think he's been dead for 5 years, and I've been mourning a ghost. Maria nodded. And now you want to finish what he started. I want to make sure no other woman has to bury her nephew because of Vincent Harrow's ambitions. Noble, but nobility doesn't stop bullets. Eleanor looked at Maria. Neither does cynicism. Maria smiled. True, but cynicism keeps you alive long enough to matter. A second knock interrupted them. Josiah and Elias entered without waiting for permission. We have a problem, Josiah announced. Eleanor felt ice in her stomach. What kind of problem? Buck Morrison kind of problem, Elias said heavily. He's missing. Left town 3 hours ago, headed toward Phoenix. Eleanor understood immediately. Warning, Vincent. Gets worse, Josiah continued. Buck took 6 men with him, deputies officially, but they're all on Vincent's payroll. Maria cursed in Spanish. Our surprise is blown. Maybe not, Eleanor stood, paced to the window. Buck doesn't know our exact plan. Doesn't know when we're moving. He just knows we're coming. That's enough, Elias said. Vincent will double the guards, triple them, turn that orphanage into a fortress. Eleanor turned back to the group. Then we change the plan. How? Eleanor smiled grimly. We don't wait for tomorrow night. We go now, this morning, while Buck's still riding toward Phoenix, while Vincent's still preparing for an attack that isn't coming yet. In daylight, Maria stared at her. That's even more insane than the original plan. Exactly. Vincent expects us to attack at night, under cover of darkness. He'll be ready for that. But a daylight assault, 3 people walking up to his front door in broad sunshine. That's so crazy it might work. Josiah considered. Element of surprise. I like it. But the approach, Elias protested. No cover, no concealment. They'll see us coming from miles away. Eleanor thought of Tommy's bloody cross, of Samuel's empty chair, of children trapped in Vincent Harrow's web of violence. Then we make sure they're too busy to shoot straight. How Eleanor began outlining the new plan. Bolder, more dangerous, more likely to get them all killed, also more likely to save the children. We ride out in 1 hour, Eleanor concluded. Hit them while the sun's still low, while they're still drinking their morning coffee and planning for tonight. Maria checked her weapons. You know this is suicide. Everything worth doing is. Josiah shouldered his rifle. At least we'll go down fighting. Elias touched the cross hanging from his neck. God forgive us all. Eleanor strapped on Samuel's gun belt. If we're lucky, he will. If not, she shrugged. We'll find out soon enough. The plan went wrong from the start. They rode hard toward Phoenix, pushing their horses through the morning heat. 3 hours out from Silverbrook, they spotted smoke on the horizon. Black smoke. Thick. Too much for a campfire. Building burning, Josiah observed. They crested a ridge and saw the source. Silver Creek Trading Post. A small settlement built around a general store and saloon. Maybe 30 people lived there. Families. Honest folks trying to make a living. The buildings were burning. Bodies lay scattered in the street. Vincent's work, Maria said grimly. Eleanor counted at least a dozen corpses. Men, women, children, all shot down like animals. Why? Elias demanded. What threat could Silver Creek pose to Vincent Harrow? Eleanor studied the scene through Samuel's field glasses. Look at the positioning. The bodies. They weren't running away. She passed the glasses to Josiah. They were running towards something, or protecting something. Josiah focused on the largest building, the general store. There. Movement in the back room. Survivors. Eleanor didn't hesitate. We go in. Fast. Clean. Save who we can. It's a trap, Maria warned. Has to be. Vincent's men are probably waiting. Probably. But we can't ride past children hiding in a burning building. Maria cursed. You're going to get us all killed. Maybe, but we're going to save some lives first. They rode down into Silver Creek with guns drawn. The silence was oppressive. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Eleanor dismounted near the general store. The building was stone, solid, not yet fully engulfed. Hello, she called. Anyone alive in there? A child's voice answered, terrified. Please don't hurt us. Eleanor's heart clenched. We're here to help. How many of you are there? 5, Mrs. Henderson and 4 kids. Can you get to the back door? I think so. Do it, now. Eleanor positioned herself to cover the rear exit. Josiah and Maria watched the street. Elias moved toward the burning saloon, checking for more survivors. The back door opened. An elderly woman emerged herding 4 children aged 6 to 12, all terrified, all looking to Eleanor for salvation. Thank God, Mrs. Henderson gasped. We thought we were going to die. What happened here? Eleanor asked as she guided them away from the burning building. Men came at dawn, 12 of them, led by a man with silver teeth, said they were looking for information about Eleanor Kane. Eleanor's blood chilled. What kind of information? Where you were, who you were with, where you might be heading. Mrs. Henderson's voice shook. When folks said they didn't know the men started shooting, silver teeth. Eleanor knew only one man who fit that description, Vicente Silver Santos, one of Vincent Harrow's lieutenants, known for his cruelty and his distinctive dental work. Did anyone tell them anything? Mrs. Henderson's face crumpled. Tom Miller, the storekeeper. They threatened his granddaughter. He told them you'd been asking about Vincent Harrow. Told them you were gathering men for some kind of mission? Eleanor closed her eyes. Their plans were blown wide open. Where are Santos and his men now? Gone. Rode toward Phoenix maybe an hour ago. Eleanor looked at the burning buildings, at the scattered bodies, at the children clinging to Mrs. Henderson's skirts. This was her fault. These people had died because of her crusade. Josiah, she called. We need to move. Now. What about them? Elias indicated the survivors. Eleanor thought quickly. Mrs. Henderson, can you get these children to Tombstone? Do you have family there? My sister lives there, but the horses... Take ours, all of them. Ride hard, don't stop. What about you? Eleanor checked her weapons. We're walking into hell. These children don't need to see that, Maria objected. Without horses, we'll never reach the orphanage in time. Yes, we will. Eleanor pointed to the burning stable. Look closer. They looked. Through the smoke and flames, shapes moved. Horses, trapped but alive. Santos left them to burn, Josiah realized. Cruel bastard. Cruel and stupid, Eleanor corrected. Now we have fresh mounts. It took 30 minutes to free the horses from the burning stable. 3 good animals, frightened but unharmed. Eleanor helped Mrs. Henderson and the children onto their original mounts. Ride hard for Tombstone, she repeated. Tell Sheriff Bean what happened here. Tell him Eleanor Kane said Vincent Harrow is a cancer that needs cutting out. Mrs. Henderson nodded. What about you? What should I tell people if you don't come back? Eleanor thought of Tommy's grave, of Samuel's empty promises, of children trapped in Vincent's orphanage. Tell them we tried. They rode toward Phoenix under a merciless sun. The new horses were strong, fresh, bred for endurance rather than speed, perfect for what lay ahead. Eleanor's mind raced as they traveled. Santos now knew they were coming, would warn Vincent. The element of surprise was gone. But maybe that didn't matter. Maybe Vincent, knowing they were coming, would work in their favor. You're thinking, Maria observed. I can practically hear the gears turning. Vincent expects us to run now, expects us to abandon the mission after what happened at Silver Creek. Shouldn't we? Elias asked. We're outnumbered 50-3. They know we're coming. Our plan is blown to hell. Eleanor smiled grimly. All true, which is why Vincent won't expect us to attack anyway. Josiah laughed. Lady, you are either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest. Why not both? They reached the outskirts of Phoenix as the sun hit its zenith. The old orphanage sat on a hill overlooking the town. Imposing, forbidding, a fortress built to contain children and create monsters. Eleanor studied the building through Samuel's field glasses. Guards patrolled the walls. More men than Samuel's notes had indicated. Vincent had definitely reinforced his position. How many? Josiah asked. 30, maybe 35. All armed, all watching the approaches. Christ, Maria muttered. This really is suicide. Eleanor continued scanning. There, 3rd floor, east wing, bars on the windows. She passed the glasses to Elias. Children's quarters. Elias focused on the windows. Small faces appeared briefly before ducking back into shadows. Kids, he confirmed. Lots of them. They looked terrified. Eleanor felt rage building in her chest. Cold, controlled, deadly. New plan, she announced. What now? Maria asked. We don't attack the orphanage. What? Eleanor pointed to the town below. We attack Phoenix, draw Vincent's men away from the children, make him choose between protecting his fortress and protecting his interests. Josiah studied the town through the glasses. Bank, sheriff's office, mayor's house. Vincent probably owns half the buildings down there. All of them, Eleanor corrected. According to Samuel's notes, Vincent bought this whole town, owns the law, controls the businesses. Phoenix is his kingdom. So we burn the kingdom, Maria said slowly. Force him to come out and fight on our terms. Eleanor nodded. Exactly. 3 people can't assault a fortress, but 3 people can definitely raise hell in a town. Elias looked troubled. What about innocent people, folks who live here but aren't part of Vincent's operation? We make noise, not corpses, Eleanor assured him. Scare them into staying indoors. Give them a reason to keep their heads down. And when Vincent's men come down from the hill, Eleanor smiled, then we introduce them to some professional courtesy. They hit Phoenix like a thunderstorm. Eleanor rode straight down Main Street, firing Samuel's Colt into the air. Not at people, at signs, at windows, at anything that would make noise and draw attention. Vincent Harrow, she shouted. Eleanor Kane wants to talk. People dove for cover. Storekeepers slammed shutters. Children disappeared into doorways. Behind Eleanor, Maria and Josiah spread out. Maria took the east side of town, Josiah the west, both making as much noise as possible without killing anyone. Vincent Harrow, Eleanor continued shouting. You killed my nephew, face me like a man. She wheeled her horse around, rode back up the street, still shooting, still shouting. A window opened in the bank. A rifle barrel emerged. Eleanor put a bullet through the window frame, close enough to discourage, far enough to avoid murder. The rifle disappeared. On the east side, Maria was demonstrating her skills. 6 shots, 6 street lamps destroyed. Precision work that announced her professional credentials to anyone watching. Josiah's rifle boomed from the west. A weather vane exploded off the courthouse roof. Another boom. The town bell rang, once then fell silent as its support rope snapped. Vincent Harrow, Eleanor's voice carried across the chaos. Come down and collect your due. They had been in town for maybe 5 minutes when the first response came. Riders, coming hard down the hill from the orphanage. 8 men, all armed, all angry. Contact, Josiah called. Eleanor counted quickly. 8 men meant Vincent had pulled a quarter of his force away from the children. Good start, but not enough. Keep making noise, she commanded. Make them think we're a bigger threat. The riders hit Main Street at full gallop. Eleanor met them head on. She shot the lead horse, not to kill but to disable. The animal went down. Its rider tumbled into the street. Eleanor wheeled around, put her second shot into another rider's shoulder. He screamed, fell from his mount, alive but out of the fight. Maria's gun spoke in rapid succession. 2 more riders went down. Clean kills. Professional work. Josiah's rifle boomed. A rider's hat disappeared along with the top of his skull. In 30 seconds, they had cut Vincent's response force in half. The surviving riders sought cover behind buildings, started shooting back. Eleanor dismounted, used her horse as cover, reloaded carefully. This was the crucial moment. If Vincent sent more men, they'd be overwhelmed. If he didn't, it meant he was more concerned about protecting his stronghold than his town. Either way, Eleanor would learn something useful. A new voice boomed across the street. Eleanor Kane. Eleanor looked up. A man stood on the bank's roof. Tall, distinguished, silver hair, expensive clothes. Vincent Harrow himself. You've got sand, lady, Vincent called. I'll give you that. Eleanor stepped into the open. You've got my nephew's blood on your hands. I'm here to collect. Vincent laughed. 1 woman against my entire organization. You must be joking. 1 woman with nothing left to lose. Eleanor raised her voice. Against a coward who hides behind children. Vincent's smile faded. Careful, Mrs. Kane. You're walking a dangerous line. I crossed that line when your men murdered Tommy. Eleanor aimed at Vincent. The distance was long, maybe 100 yards. Samuel's Colt was accurate, but not that accurate. She fired anyway. The bullet sparked off the roof beside Vincent's feet, close enough to make a point. Vincent dove for cover. Next one's between your eyes, Eleanor shouted. More riders appeared on the hill, coming fast. Another dozen men. Eleanor smiled grimly. Vincent was committing more forces, drawing more guards away from the children. The plan was working. "Time to go," she called to her companions. They mounted quickly, rode hard toward the edge of town. Behind them, Vincent's men gave chase. 20 men now. Half of Vincent's total force pulled away from the orphanage. The mathematics of war were shifting in their favor. As they reached Phoenix's outskirts, Eleanor looked back once. Smoke rose from several buildings. Not serious fires, but enough to keep the town's attention focused downward instead of upward. Perfect. Now came the hard part. Getting back to the orphanage, getting inside, finding the children, and settling accounts with Vincent Harrow. End of part 2, word count approximately 7,000 words. They rode hard into the Badlands north of Phoenix. 20 men pursued them, Vincent's best killers, all mounted, all angry, all closing the distance with each passing mile. Eleanor's horse began to falter. The animal had given everything. Foam flecked its mouth. Its breathing came in ragged gasps. "We need to make a stand," Josiah called. "Horses won't last much longer." Eleanor scanned the terrain ahead. Red stone, deep arroyos, twisted canyons that led nowhere. And there, like a scar across the desert floor, Devil's Canyon, the place where this had all begun, where Tommy died, where Eleanor first tasted blood. "There," she pointed. "We finished this where it started." They reached the canyon rim as their pursuers closed to within rifle range. Bullets whined past their heads. Close. Getting closer. Eleanor dismounted, slapped her horse's rump. "Go. You've earned your freedom." The animal stumbled away into the desert. Maria and Josiah did the same with their mounts. "Down into the canyon," Eleanor ordered. "Find cover. Make them come to us." The three allies descended into the maze of stone. Behind them, hoofbeats grew louder. Voices shouted commands. 20 killers preparing for a massacre. Eleanor found a position behind a boulder. The same boulder where she'd hidden 2 days ago, where she'd watched Tommy die. Full circle. Josiah scrambled up a rock face, found a sniper's perch with clear fields of fire. His rifle spoke once. A distant scream answered. 19, he called down. Maria positioned herself in a narrow defile, both guns drawn, ready for close work. The hunters had become the hunted. Vincent's men reached the canyon rim, dismounted, advanced on foot, professional, cautious, deadly. "Mrs. Kane," one of them called. "Vincent wants to talk." Eleanor's answer was a bullet that sparked off stone near the speaker's head. "Talk time's over." The battle began in earnest. 20 men descended into Devil's Canyon. 17 came back up. The first wave advanced in a line. Disciplined, coordinated. They'd done this before. Josiah's rifle picked them apart. One shot, one kill. Professional courtesy among professional killers. 16, he called. Maria waited until they were close. Then both guns spoke in harmony. A deadly duet that left 2 men bleeding in the sand. 14. Her voice carried dark satisfaction. Eleanor held her fire. Waited. Patience was a weapon too. The survivors sought cover, began working their way through the canyon in small groups. Flanking maneuvers. Classic tactics. A shadow moved to Eleanor's left. She turned. Fired. A man screamed. Fell. Clutched his shattered knee. 13. But they were learning, adapting, working together to pin down the defenders. A rifle cracked. Rock exploded near Josiah's position. He ducked, returned fire, missed. Another shot. This one found flesh. Josiah grunted. Red spread across his left shoulder. "I'm hit," he called. Still in the fight. Maria's position came under concentrated fire. She was forced deeper into the defile, away from the main battle. Eleanor found herself alone, facing 8 men with only 3 shots left in Samuel's Colt. The mathematics of war were turning against them. Eleanor Kane. A new voice. Closer. "This is Santos Vincent's lieutenant." Eleanor peered around the boulder. A man with silver teeth smiled at her from 30 feet away. "Vicente Santos, the butcher of Silver Creek." "Your friends are bleeding out," Santos called. "Surrender now and Vincent might let them live." "Counter offer," Eleanor replied. "Go to hell." Santos laughed. Defiant to the end. I like that. Makes breaking you more satisfying. Eleanor counted his men. 7 others, all with clear shots at her position. She was trapped. Last chance, Santos warned. Eleanor thought of Tommy, of Samuel, of children trapped in Vincent's fortress. She stood, stepped into the open, Samuel's Colt steady in her hands. Here's my answer. The canyon erupted in gunfire. Elias Morrison had been many things in his life: minister, hunter, killer, failure. But watching Eleanor Kane face 8 men alone, he remembered what he'd been before the guilt and whiskey. He'd been a man who protected the innocent. Elias rose from his concealed position behind the canyon wall. The position Eleanor didn't know he'd taken. The backup plan none of them had discussed. 7 men had their guns trained on Eleanor. None watched their backs. Elias had brought Samuel's throwing axe, the one from the chest, the one marked with old bloodstains. His first throw took Santos in the back. The silver-toothed killer arched, screamed, fell forward with 8 inches of steel between his shoulder blades. The other men spun, confused, disoriented. Eleanor's Colt spoke 3 times. 3 men dropped. Elias charged. No guns, no plan, just rage and purpose. He tackled the nearest killer. They went down hard, rolling, fighting. The man tried to draw his pistol. Elias broke his wrist, then his neck. A rifle swung toward him. Elias ducked, grabbed a chunk of red stone, brought it down on the shooter's skull. Bone cracked, blood flowed. The last man ran. Josiah's rifle boomed. The runner stumbled, fell, moved no more. Silence returned to Devil's Canyon. Eleanor stared at Elias. Where did you come from? Been following you since Phoenix. Figured you might need backup. I thought you were getting the children out. Elias retrieved his axe from Santos's corpse, wiped the blade clean. Change of plans. Maria's handling the orphanage. Eleanor's blood chilled. Alone. She volunteered, said 3 people attacking the fortress was suicide, but one person, one very quiet, very skilled person, that might just work. Josiah climbed down from his perch. Blood leaked through his shirt, but he was mobile. How long ago? Eleanor demanded. Hour, maybe 2. She should be inside by now. Eleanor checked her ammunition. 3 bullets left. Then we better get there fast before Vincent realizes what's happening. What about him? Josiah nodded toward Santos's body. Eleanor drew her knife, cut off Santos's silver teeth, all of them, dropped them into a leather pouch. Message for Vincent. He'll understand. They reached St. Catherine's home for orphaned children as the sun touched the western horizon. The fortress sat on its hill like a cancer. Stone walls, barred windows, guard towers on each corner. But something was wrong. Too quiet, Josiah observed. Eleanor studied the building through Samuel's field glasses. No guards on the walls, no movement in the towers. Maria's work. Maybe, or a trap. They approached carefully. 3 figures moving through lengthening shadows, alert for ambush, ready for violence. The front gate stood open. Eleanor felt ice in her stomach. Definitely a trap. Wakronara Maria succeeded beyond our wildest expectations, Elias suggested. Only one way to find out. They advanced through the gate, into a courtyard paved with blood. Bodies lay scattered like broken dolls. Vincent's men, all dead, all killed with precision. Professional work. Christ, Josiah breathed. She went through them like a plague. Eleanor counted corpses. 15, maybe 20. Hard to tell where one ended and another began. Maria, she called softly. No answer. They moved toward the main building. Massive oak doors, reinforced with iron bands, standing wide open. Inside, more bodies, more blood. A trail of destruction that led deeper into the fortress. Eleanor followed the trail, past empty rooms, past abandoned offices, past classrooms where Vincent had taught children to kill. The trail ended at a heavy wooden door, locked, barred, but the lock had been shot away. Eleanor pushed the door open and found hell. The room beyond the door had once been a dormitory. 30 beds, small, simple, built for children. Now it was a prison, Children huddled in corners. Boys and girls aged 6 to 16, all thin, all scared, all bearing the marks of systematic abuse. And in the center of the room, Maria Valdez knelt beside a small boy, maybe 8 years old. Blood leaked from a wound in his chest. "Help me," Maria said without looking up. "He's been shot." Eleanor knelt beside her. The boy's breathing was shallow, rapid. His skin was pale. "What's his name?" "Miguel," Maria whispered. "Same as my brother." Eleanor understood. "How bad?" "Bad. The bullet's still in there. He needs a doctor." Elias appeared beside them. "I know some field medicine. Let me look." He examined the wound carefully, gently. Bullet missed the lung, but he's lost a lot of blood. "Can you save him?" "Maybe, if we get him to a real doctor soon." Eleanor looked around the room. "How many are us?" 27 children, Maria replied. "All of them prisoners, some for years." "What about Vincent?" Maria's expression darkened. "Gone. Ran when the shooting started. Took 6 men with him." Eleanor felt rage building. He left the children, used them as shields, told his men to shoot anyone who tried to follow. Eleanor stood. "Where did he go?" "Don't know, but I found this." Maria handed her a telegram. "Recent. Urgent." Eleanor read it aloud. "Plan failed. Kane alive. Moving to secondary position. Prepare final solution." "Secondary position?" Josiah asked. Eleanor thought of Samuel's maps, of all the marks and notations, of one location circled in red ink. "The mine," she breathed. "Copper Creek Mine, 20 miles south." "What's there?" Eleanor's blood turned to ice. "According to Samuel's notes, explosives. Enough to level half of Phoenix." The implications hit them all at once. "Vincent's final solution," Elias said slowly. "If he can't have his kingdom, he'll destroy everything." Eleanor looked at the children, at little Miguel fighting for his life, at 26 other innocents who'd suffered enough. "Maria, can you get them to safety? Where they need medical care? Food, real homes?" "Tombstone. Sheriff Ban will help. Tell him Eleanor Kane said these children are under his protection." Maria nodded. "What about you?" Eleanor checked Samuel's Colt. Still 3 bullets. Not enough for what came next. "Josiah and I are going after Vincent." "I'm coming too," Elias insisted. "No, these children need you. They need someone they can trust. Someone who looks like salvation instead of vengeance." Elias wanted to argue, but he looked at the children's faces, at their fear, at their desperate need for kindness. "End it," he said simply. "End him." Eleanor nodded. "Count on it." They rode through the desert night, 2 horses, 2 riders, racing toward a final confrontation that had been 5 years in the making. Eleanor's mind drifted as they traveled, back to the beginning, to a quiet ranch where she'd tried to build something peaceful with Samuel. "Tell me about your husband," Josiah said as if reading her thoughts. "Samuel was complicated. When I met him, he was trying to leave his past behind, trying to become someone better." "Did he succeed?" Eleanor considered. "For a while. We had 15 good years, quiet years. Then Vincent Harrow came back into his life. And Samuel went hunting. Samuel went to end it, once and for all. He thought he could handle Vincent alone." They rode in silence for a mile. "Maybe he did," Josiah suggested. "Maybe Vincent's been running scared for 5 years. Maybe that's why he's so desperate now." Eleanor hoped that was true. Hoped Samuel had hurt Vincent badly enough to matter. But hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not tonight. They reached Copper Creek Mine as the moon set. The mine sat in a narrow valley, abandoned, forgotten, perfect for someone who wanted to disappear, or someone who wanted to destroy everything. Lights flickered in the mine office. Movement, activity. "How many men?" Eleanor asked. Josiah studied the scene through his rifle scope. 6, maybe 7. All armed, all nervous. "Vincent, don't see him, but there's something else. Wagons, loaded with something heavy." Eleanor felt dread settle in her stomach. "Explosives. Enough to level Phoenix, just like you said." Eleanor dismounted, checked her weapons one final time. Samuel's Colt, 3 bullets. Samuel's knife, sharp, ready. Not much against 7 armed men, but it would have to be enough. What's the plan? Josiah asked. Eleanor smiled grimly. Same as always. Make noise. Draw them out. Kill Vincent Harrow. That's not much of a plan. Best I've got. They advanced toward the mine. 2 figures moving through darkness. Hunters closing on their prey. Behind them, the desert held its silence. Ahead, Vincent Harrow waited for his final judgment. Eleanor found Vincent Harrow exactly where she expected, in the deepest part of the mine, surrounded by crates of dynamite, standing beside a wagon loaded with enough explosives to destroy half of Arizona. But he wasn't alone. A figure knelt beside him, hands bound, face bloody, beaten but alive. Samuel Kane. Eleanor's world tilted. Samuel. Her husband looked up, 57 years old, gray-haired, scarred by 5 years of captivity, but alive. Eleanor, he whispered, don't look at me like that. Vincent Harrow smiled. Touching reunion, though I'm afraid it will be brief. Eleanor kept her gun trained on Vincent. Let him go. I don't think so. You see, Samuel and I have been having a very long conversation. 5 years long, to be precise. Eleanor's hands shook with rage. You tortured him, educated him, taught him the consequences of his interference, showed him what happens when someone tries to destroy Vincent Harrow's work. Vincent gestured to the explosives. Tomorrow I detonate this little collection. Phoenix disappears, along with everyone who might remember the name Vincent Harrow. Including yourself. Vincent's smile widened. A small price for artistic perfection? Eleanor circled slowly, keeping her distance, looking for an opening. You were just a boy when Samuel first hunted you. What happened to you? Vincent's expression darkened. You want to know what happened? Your precious husband happened. He found me in that orphanage. Found me being educated by the men who ran it. Eleanor felt sick understanding. They abused you. They broke me, rebuilt me, turned me into something useful. And when Samuel Kane finally tracked me down, do you know what he did? Eleanor waited. He saved me, killed my tormentors, set me free, told me I could be better than what they'd made me. Vincent's voice cracked with old pain and rage. I believed him, tried to be better, tried to be good. But the world doesn't want broken children to be good, Mrs. Kane. The world wants us to stay broken. So you decided to break others. I decided to give the world what it wanted. Violence, fear, children trained to kill without question or conscience. Eleanor understood now. Vincent Harrow wasn't evil. He was damaged, broken beyond repair, a victim who had become a monster. It didn't change what she had to do. Let Samuel go, she repeated. Your fight is with me. My fight is with the world that made me. Samuel just happened to be part of it. Vincent drew his pistol, pressed it against Samuel's head. 3 bullets left in that Colt, Mrs. Kane. I know because I've been watching you, counting. Eleanor's finger found the trigger. You can kill me, probably will, but not before I kill your husband. Not before I detonate these explosives. Not before I take half of Arizona with me. There's another option. What? Eleanor smiled coldly. I could kill Samuel myself. Vincent stared at Eleanor in shock. What did you say? Eleanor kept her gun trained on Vincent, but her words were aimed at Samuel. 5 years, Samuel. 5 years I mourned you. 5 years I lived alone. 5 years I wondered what I'd done wrong. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. Eleanor, you chose this. You chose to hunt Vincent instead of trusting me with the truth. You chose to disappear instead of facing your problems together. Eleanor's voice hardened. You chose Vincent Harrow over your own wife. That's not... Isn't it? Eleanor stepped closer. You had a choice. Come home and tell me everything. Ask for my help. Face Vincent together as a team. Another step. Instead, you decided to be a hero. Decided I was too weak to handle the truth. Vincent watched this exchange with fascination. Domestic disputes. How mundane. Eleanor ignored him. Tommy's dead because of your choices, Samuel. That boy died because you couldn't finish what you started. Samuel's face crumpled. I know, God help me, I know. So here's my choice. Eleanor raised her gun, aimed it at Samuel's heart. I can kill you myself, quick, clean, painless. Or I can let Vincent do it, slow, cruel, after he's made you watch Phoenix burn. Vincent's smile faded. He sensed something changing, something he didn't understand. Eleanor, please, Samuel began. Choose, Eleanor cut him off. Die by my hand or his? Samuel looked into his wife's eyes, saw something that hadn't been there 15 years ago. Something hard, cold, unforgiving. Yours, he whispered. If it has to be someone, yours. Eleanor nodded. Close your eyes. Samuel closed his eyes. Eleanor pulled the trigger, but not at Samuel. The bullet took Vincent Harrow in the shoulder, spun him around. His gun discharged harmlessly into the mine wall. Eleanor's second shot hit him center mass. Vincent staggered, looked down at the blood spreading across his chest. Impossible, he gasped. You chose him over justice. Eleanor's third and final shot took Vincent between the eyes. He fell backward into the wagon full of explosives, dead before he hit the dynamite. Eleanor holstered Samuel's Colt, drew Samuel's knife, cut her husband's bonds. Can you walk? Samuel rubbed his wrists. I think so, but the explosives are going nowhere. Vincent was the only one who knew how to detonate them safely. Without him, they're just expensive paperweights. They walked toward the mine entrance. Behind them, Vincent Harrow's body lay sprawled among his weapons of destruction. Eleanor, Samuel said softly, what you said back there was theater. Vincent needed to believe I'd choose revenge over love. Needed to think he understood me. And now, Eleanor paused at the mine entrance. Looked back at Vincent's corpse. Now he's dead, and we have a choice to make. What choice? Eleanor pulled Santos's silver teeth from her pouch, scattered them over Vincent's body. We can go back to what we were. Pretend the last 5 years never happened. Try to rebuild our quiet life. Or, Eleanor met Samuel's eyes. Or we finish what you started. There are other Vincent Harrows out there. Other monsters preying on the innocent. Samuel considered. You're talking about becoming hunters, professional killers. I'm talking about becoming protectors, people who stand between the innocent and the darkness. They emerged from the mine into pre-dawn darkness. In the distance, the lights of Phoenix twinkled like fallen stars. The children Vincent held. Eleanor continued. They'll need homes, protection, someone to make sure they're never hurt again. And the men who worked for him, the ones who escaped, Eleanor's hand touched Samuel's gun. Will face justice, one way or another. Samuel nodded slowly. It's not the life we planned. No, but maybe it's the life we're meant for. They walked toward Josiah, who waited with the horses. It's done, he asked. Eleanor nodded. Vincent's dead. The explosives are neutralized. Phoenix is safe. And now, Eleanor mounted her horse. Now we go home, collect our allies, start planning. Planning what? Eleanor looked toward the horizon where the sun would soon rise on a new day. The next hunt. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the cemetery of Tombstone. 4 graves lay before her. Fresh flowers marked each one. Tommy Kane, beloved nephew, Samuel Kane, devoted husband Vincent Harrow, may God forgive him, Maria Valdez, La Muerte. Friend Samuel had lived exactly 3 weeks after their reunion. Long enough to help settle Vincent's surviving victims. Long enough to see the children placed in good homes. Long enough to tell Eleanor he loved her. Then his tortured body had finally surrendered to 5 years of abuse. Eleanor had buried him beside Tommy, where he belonged. Maria had died 2 weeks later, shot in the back by one of Vincent's surviving lieutenants. She'd killed her assassin but took a bullet in the lung. Died in Eleanor's arms, speaking her brother's name. Eleanor had hunted down the remaining members of Vincent's organization one by one, methodically, professionally, without mercy. The last one had begged for his life, promised to reform, swore he'd never hurt another innocent person. Eleanor had shot him anyway. Talking to ghosts again. Eleanor turned. Josiah approached carrying fresh flowers. His shoulder had healed well, but he still favored his left arm. Reporting in. Eleanor replied, letting them know the work continues. Josiah placed flowers on Maria's grave. Any word from Elias? Letter came yesterday. He's in Denver, helping relocate some of Vincent's victims. Says he's thinking about opening a school. For the children, for anyone who needs a second chance. They stood in comfortable silence. Two killers in a graveyard, surrounded by the consequences of their choices. Any regrets? Josiah asked. Eleanor considered. About Vincent, no. About the methods we use sometimes. And about Samuel. Eleanor touched her husband's headstone. Samuel made his choices. I made mine. Regret doesn't change anything. A rider approached, young, fast, urgent. Mrs. Kane, the boy called. Sheriff Bean sent me. Says there's trouble in Wickenburg. Folks being murdered. Children going missing. Eleanor's hand moved instinctively to Samuel's gun. What kind of trouble? The organized kind. Gang of men calling themselves the Resurrection. Leader goes by the name Gabriel. Eleanor and Josiah exchanged glances. How many children? Eleanor asked. Dozens so far. Maybe more. Eleanor mounted her horse. Tell Sheriff Bean we'll handle it. We? The boy looked confused. Josiah mounted as well. Kane and Associates, professional problem solvers. The boy rode away. Eleanor and Josiah prepared to follow. Ready for another hunt? Josiah asked. Eleanor looked back at the four graves, at Tommy's broken cross, at Samuel's simple headstone, at Maria's elaborate marker, at Vincent's unmarked stone. Justice isn't a destination, she said finally. It's a journey, and the journey never ends. They rode out of Tombstone as the sun climbed higher. Behind them, the cemetery held its silence. Ahead, another town waited for salvation. Another monster needed killing. Another group of innocents needed protection. The work continued. In the distance, church bells rang the hour. Somewhere, children laughed. Somewhere, families lived in peace. Because Eleanor Kane and her allies stood watch in the darkness. Because some people chose to be the thin line between civilization and chaos. Because justice, real justice, was worth any price. Even the price of becoming monsters to fight monsters. Eleanor Kane had been many things in her life. Rancher's wife, grieving aunt, reluctant killer, professional hunter. Now she was something simpler, something necessary, something the world needed even if it didn't want to admit it. She was justice with a gun and the will to use it, and in a world full of Vincent Harrows that was enough. The hunt continued. The end. Final word count approximately 22,000 words total. Part 1, 700,000 words. Part 2, 700,000 words. Part 3, 800,000 words.